but there's a little button you just need to press, and then that little warning sign will go away. So good morning and welcome to 2023. This is our first session for 2023. Just from Henry and my perspective and everybody who contributes to this panel, to this channel and this platform, just all the best to all of you for 2023. It started off hectically busy, for some uncertain, for others it has been business as usual, but certainly always exciting and interesting to be in public procurement. The 2022 Preferential Procurement Regulations were effective on early morning on Monday, the 16th of January. One of the provisions in that regulation is that bidders provide proof of the points they claim for their specific goals. And we're going to try and unpack that a little bit today and see if we could just add a little bit of value to that, that discussion. So really, what is the proof provision? And then also, what is it that you can ask for and expect? Just for those that might be new to this particular platform, it is for public procurement and SCM professionals. I mention that because we've had a couple of people from private sector that have joined us. You're welcome, but just to say, we're not here to talk to and address issues that suppliers are experiencing. We want to try and address that through the public procurement and SCM professional themselves. And the purpose of this is just really to help public procurement and SCM professionals do exceptional work in your field. That's the idea. There is no obligation, there's no cost. This is put together by a couple of us who are just interested in progressing this particular community and this profession. Here are the big picture discussion items we're going to go through today. And first one is just really a poll that we're going to get into, just trying to understand a little bit about the status. And then we'll open the discussion on the proof provision. So let's quickly see if we can just get a sense of the status of procurement in different entities. And here it is. It's anonymous. I've launched the poll. You should see it there now. And just asking you, where are you at the moment as far as procurement is concerned in your organization? Some of you might be saying, and that would be the first option, hey, we continue with business as usual. We're working under our old policy. Nothing really has changed. We continue. The second one there is we have an approved preferential procurement policy in line with the Preferential Procurement Regulations 2022. We've updated our SCM policy and we are buying, we are active and we are going. And I was pleased to see that there are a couple of tenders that have already been issued by some who are already have factored in the PPR 2022 regs. Some of you might say, we have put our tenders and quotations on hold. Kevin, I'm just going to mute you briefly. We've put our tenders and quotations on hold until such time as we either get exemption or we get approval to the policies that we have updated. The others are more or less a little bit more of a if you like, refinement of the previous one. We've updated our SCM policies. We're waiting for approval. We've applied for exemption and wait for approval before we restart. And some might just say, we're actually not sure what we want to do, what we should do, and we're waiting for some direction from National Treasury or our Provincial Treasury. So do you want to try and just give a response to that? Where is SCM at the moment in your particular organization? Continue and please, this is completely anonymous. There is no way I can actually go in afterwards and find out who has voted what. But keen to get your perspective. very interesting, very interesting. You see, as soon as they saw that word that you signed on with, then people become very hesitant to respond. Just checking, are you able to respond? Is it is this active? All right, we've got a hand. Let's just quickly check. We started to get some responses coming through. Good. So let's see how it's going. People are responding. Thank you. It is a poll that we're showing. So you should see it online at the moment. Now, normally with the polls that I do, that actually allows me to see who's on and sorry, not who's on, but what the scores are that are coming through. So I'll just leave it a little bit longer and we can just then get a perspective on where people stand. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you, Miranda. Thanks for honor. Taboho, great. Good. Morning, Geraldine. All right, so let's see. I hope that I can actually see this when I do launch the poll. Sorry, do close the poll. So let's just give it a couple more minutes, a couple more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me see if this works. I'm going to end the poll. And let's see if I can share the results. Now, I don't know if anyone else can see the results, but I can't see anything at the moment. Can anyone else see the results?
Yes, we can.
Henry, would you kindly just read some of those out and just share some of that with us if you can?
Sure, of course.
I can't see a thing for some reason. Go ahead.
Okay. So, okay, there's disappears again. So just hang on. I'll see if I can pull it back again. Okay, I've got it back.
Yeah. Okay.
So in terms of the options you've got there, we continue with tenders and quotations under old policy. That was 8%. The second option, we have an approved preferential procurement policy. That one's got 18%.
18.
That's right. And people that 16% of institutions put all tenders and quotations on hold. And 36% then says we have updated our SM and preferential procurement policies. Nobody's on the group has applied for exemption. And 8% not sure what to do, waiting for National Treasury or Provincial Treasury. And yeah, 18% other. I don't know what the other is, but is 14%, 1/4 said other. So
Great.
I'm not sure what those other measures are taken.
Yeah, interesting. I put the exemption question on there because in the Telegram group that we're running, there was a bit of a discussion on that last week, and I know that one of the provincial treasuries applied on behalf of the municipalities, and yeah, interesting on that one. So yeah, quite interesting that no one has said. But anyway, that's interesting. So we've got then a whole bunch of people that are waiting for their approvals, their policies to be approved, and very, very encouraging to see that some of you have already got your policies approved and you are purchasing, you are buying. So Sanele, what did you think of that poll result? Welcome, Sanele.
Morning, colleagues. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Welcome. Yes.
Yeah, so it's been a while, man.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think there has been some work done. I see 2 of the positive polls. They have been, I think they've been ranking high. The colleagues have their policies approved. Others have had their policies reviewed. So it seems like, yeah, we're getting somewhere. Although there's some numbers that are seemingly at the back of the line a bit.
Good, positive. Thanks, Sanele. We'll ask you to come in a little bit later. And just a quick question. There were a couple of people that said other. Maybe if you want, you can unmute and just share with us what the other meant. I certainly didn't get all the different options in there. Anyone else want to just share what you meant by other? Go ahead, Sanele.
Sorry, Sean, I didn't get that.
So I was just asking, there was a couple of people that voted for the other option right at the back end there, which was just a catch-all. And I think it was 12% or something. And just wanted to ask those that voted the other, if you could maybe just share with us what you meant by that.
Oh, okay.
Let's just see if there's anyone else that could do that. Yeah, I must say I was quite interested to see that it's a fairly low number of people that are procuring against the old policy. You know, I think be aware that there is some risk in that. You know, the 2017 regulations were very significant, and there are very significant changes between 2017 and the 2022 regulations. And I think there's a high risk of irregular expenditure if you are buying on, you are putting tenders out there and quotations out there, and you have not updated your policy. That's quite a risk. But let's leave that there. Hello, Ronald, welcome. All right, very good. So let's just quickly then open up the discussion then on the whole issue of proof of provision. Let me just quickly kick off by just giving some examples of specific goals. Now, I don't want to get into whether this is complete or whether there's something in here that might be wrong or, you know, hasn't really got the right emphasis, but here are some examples of specific goals. Enterprises owned by Black people, enterprises located in a specific province or district or municipality or town or township or village or rural area. Enterprises owned by so that second one is locality. Enterprises owned by Black women, by people who are disabled, by Black youth, by Black military veterans, cooperatives, civil society organizations, NGOs, and then there is the RDP one, which is the small, medium, and micro enterprises. So those are examples of specific goals. And we're going to use this just to get the discussion going on what proof might be needed as far as these different specific goals are concerned. Now let's look at the proof provision in the Preferential Procurement Regulations 2022. It says there very clearly that the specific goal in the invitation to submit the tender for which a point may be awarded and the number of points that will be awarded to each goal and the proof of the claim of such goal must be there. So it is that that point on, I'm just going to see if I can try and move this, on the proof of the claim of such goal is really what we want to talk about. And it's a discussion because the proof of triple BE, which was in the 2017 regulations, is still very fresh in many of our minds. And so we've got, you know, institutional memory of 11, 12 years of looking for proof of triple BE. And now we've got a whole bunch of specific goals that, you know, talk about everything from located in specific rural areas to Black youth, to cooperatives, to SMMEs, different language possibly, different goals, and hence we want to just try and open up that discussion then on what constitutes proof. If we have a look at the new 6.1, This particular extract is from the NBD 6.1. Towards the back end, it says there that in terms of Regulation 4.2, 5.2, 6.2, 7.2, 4.2 and 5.2 are both on the acquisition. 6 and 7 are on the income generating contracts. Preference points must be awarded for specific goals stated in the tender. For the purpose of this tender, the tenderer will be allocated points based on the goal stated in table 1, and there's a table that is in there, as may be supported by proof/documentation stated in the conditions of this tender. So you'll notice that the regulation doesn't say anything specifically around what proof is required. So in the 2017 regulations, it was very clear, proof of BBBE. Now we've got a range of different specific objectives. And so the regulation can't be prescriptive or specific about what it is. And so there's a requirement then on us when we're putting our specifications together to state as a condition of tender, what is it that we believe deems proof of your claim of those points, as may be supported by proof/documentation stated in the conditions of tender. So that's to set the scene. Now, I've asked Kevin Naik, advocate in Ntsaluba, and also Sanele to come in and just help us with that, Sanele Khomo, to just help us with this discussion, and so we can get into it into a little bit of detail. Now, let's let me just jump a little bit further back. If you don't mind, I'm going to skip the first one, which is the enterprises owned by Black people, and ask Kevin if you wouldn't mind coming in and giving us just some perspectives, Kevin, from your side on what would constitute, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion with Kevin. Kevin, you can unmute and you can turn your camera on, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion with Kevin on this whole issue of locality. There we are, Kevin, we can see you. You're unmuted, we can hear you, and welcome, thank you. Did you have a good break?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sean. No, I don't have a break.
I believe you were working.
Did not have a break at all, you know. I was one of the unfortunate people, you know, that had to work over the festive season, but it's all for a good cause. It's all for a good cause.
Good one. And I believe you were working on a policy, a preferential procurement policy. So
yes,
deep in it, and you've been thinking about it, and so well done. And thank you for your commitment. I'm sure they're very, very grateful for what you did there. I'm going to stop sharing here. And so, Kevin, tell us a little bit then about proof of locality. Now, sorry, before I hand over to you, many people say the last place we want to look for proof of locality is CSD. Because on CSD, somebody registers and then they know they want to do work in Salt Plaikes and eThekwini and Polokwane and all over, and so they say, hey, we can work in these places. Give us a little bit now. We want to check that this particular organization is really in that place. Give us your thoughts on proof of locality.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sean. Good morning, everybody, once again. And from our side also, I want to wish you all the best for the new year. There are quite exciting times that lies ahead, especially with regard to the new preferential procurement regulations, the policy that you must have in place. And yes, if a person also, Sean, look at the polls, you can see there's quite a small percentage of institutions currently present who are either having a policy in place or who are waiting for approval of the new policy. But the proof is in the eating. The proof is in the eating. So obviously, when you have your policy in place, you will have the specific goals that you want to achieve. But your policy will obviously not be a static one. It will be a live document, because this is something new. As you know, in the past, National Treasury prescribed. Treasury don't prescribe anymore. They provide the framework in terms of the 2022 regulations. The challenge now is for each institution to identify the specific goals which they want to achieve. And as Sean have indicated there on the screen, there are quite a few specific objectives that you can choose from. Now, I'm going to specifically talk about the localization one. In the past, and I've been involved in some government departments, some municipalities over the years. And one of the issues that really came out of a lot of discussions, and also from the various politicians, was the issue of allocating work to people in a specific rural area or specific municipal area. And for that purposes, the 2017 regulation and the 2011 regulation did not make provision for that. The 2001 regulations, yes, it made provision to allocate points for municipality, district, etc. Now there's opportunity to allocate points for people or for businesses located in a specific province, but not in a specific province per se, but you can drill down further. You can go to a local municipality. You can go to a district municipality. You can go to rural areas or villages. Let's take, for instance, commodities like cleaning services, catering services. If you are in infrastructure, this is a very good opportunity to attract the local guys who work in that environment. From an infrastructure perspective, a lot of people say, let's say for instance, in the bigger provinces, you'll find people who come from Gauteng to come and do the work in a province like Limpopo. And they bring the people from Gauteng also to come and complete the work. But there are people who are located in that particular municipal area who are also qualified to do the work. So this is now an ideal opportunity with the new regulations to make provision for those guys who are there locally to be also involved in a particular project. So when we look at identifying localization, the fact is, are we going to say this is going to be a primary objective? Will there be a secondary objective? Will you make it mandatory or will you not make it mandatory? But if you identify this as an that you want to achieve, I said earlier, it's not all about, if you in the but specification stage indicate that we want localization in a particular rural area or village area, we want to target those specific enterprises, and we're going to allocate points. The question now is, how are you going to allocate points at the evaluation stage? And specific documentation, CSD is there. You can get information from CSD, get a particular address from a relative or somebody in that particular area in the Western Cape. So we specific and who reside in that particular area. So over and above the CSD, what we want to have as well is that the specific bidders or tenders, as it's called in bill, that you get from particular area. You also need to the municipality a lease agreement. If you're not the owner of that particular building, if you lease the building, then we need a copy of that lease agreement to give us indication that yes, your business is located in that particular area. Then if you go to a village or we go to a rural area, there we also would require the enterprise or the business to submit a copy of the permission of the local chief. That document where the chief will sign to allocate that particular land to a supplier, bidder or tenderer. We want to also get an affidavit. So there are various documentation that you would, as an organ of state, include in your RFQ or in your RFP, what the bidder must submit with their proposal, because that documentation will determine the points that you will allocate to that particular bidder. In the event that they do not submit those documentation as required, Sean, I will just elaborate a little bit on that particular issue.
Sure.
Then you're not going to disqualify, as we know, the person from the tendering process. You're basically just going to give the person 0 and continue with the process. Sean, I think for now,
Thanks.
let's leave it at that point. We can get the discussion and we can then engage further on it. But I think that is just to get the discussion going, you know, in terms of documentation.
Absolutely. So you've covered the 3 things. Then it's the municipal rates bill. If they in an area where that gets provided, you've spoken about the instance where somebody is leasing a property or they're staying there. This might be a young person who's still staying at their parents' home, or it is somebody who is in a place, a village where there's no such service or rates bill, and you've said there's a document of some sort that they would get either from the chief or to just prove that they're in that area. Good. Thank you, Kevin. And then you've made the point to say that we don't disqualify somebody if they just don't get points, which is what we had in the previous 2017 regulation. So that's good. Let's bring Advocate Ntsaluba in now. And thank you, Kevin. And we're going to just move to something now which is a little bit more or different to the municipal rates bill discussion or the locality discussion. And we're going to ask Advocate Ntsaluba to come in. And Advocate, you can, if you're online, you can unmute.
Thank you, Sean.
There we are. Thank you. And welcome to turn your camera on. You looked nice and fresh this morning, so it'd be lovely.
Can you see me?
Yes, now we can see you. Thank you. And so, Advocate, one of the areas that I know you have a passion for and a huge interest in is military veterans. And you know, it's not just, and I was very pleased to see that it's not going to be, you know, SANDF and now that are going to be asking for military veterans to be part of their preferential procurement system. Share with us a little bit about the types of proof that is available that can be asked for by suppliers to prove that somebody's a military veteran.
Thank you, Sean.
My apologies. Yes, I can hear you. I didn't wish you Happy New Year, and I didn't ask you if you had a good break.
Well, and to answer the first question, the new year is there. I'm not sure about the happiness. The resting, you are the witness. I think what I can say is that as as patriotic citizens, we have a role to use the little that we have to move the South Africa Pty Ltd forward. So it is always a joy to use the knowledge that we have gathered in our various deployments in government and in the private sector to assist to lessen the load from those that are having a responsibility to do administration and do due diligence. Of course, in most instances, pro bono, but in others not. Let me first then greet everybody and I want to say shalom. And we were here in December, the last meeting where I was asking for a quick dirty format from Sean that will enable us all to have what is required in terms of the regulations. And yes, the statistics is showing the typical bureaucracy of government, but at least we have moved. Let me get to the issue which I raised at that time, and I want to raise it again, that the pieces of legislation are there to drive the transformation agenda. Typically, the BEE Act, which I'm not going to refer to, I'm diverted to the Military Veterans Act, but I want to say each legislation exists on its own, and it has requirements that have to be performed. And that is always provided by a must and a shall. And that must and a shall is not subordinated to any other piece of legislation. Now, coming to the Military Veterans Act, Sean, please allow me just to clear out the space by just saying, giving a 2-minute historical perspective so that people understand why the evidence is what is required. Once upon a time, there was a defense review, 1998, within which there was a requirement to ensure that all the persons that have contributed to the democracy directly or indirectly are recognized and honored and acknowledged. Pursuant to that, there was an act, Military Veterans Act of 1999, which focused only on governance. It dealt with your advisory councils, just on governance, but it never focused on benefits. Hence then, at a budget vote of 2009, yes, Minister Sisulu announced the task team that whose responsibility was to go deeper and look at the landscape and begin to develop a report which became a framework report on how military veterans' dignity can be appreciated by all. Now, that framework report, that framework policy was the foregrounder for the Military Veterans Bill, which then upon consultation ended up being the Military Veterans Act of 18 of 2011 in December, whose implementation was to be announced by way of a gazette. Why so? Because the focus of the Military Veterans Act 18 of 2011 has Section 5, which talks about the benefits, the 11 benefits that accrue to military veterans. And part of which you have 3 benefits that accrue to dependents of military veterans. That Section 5 has then Section 5(3), which requires all organs of state. It says they must cooperate with the ministry, with the executive authority to ensure that these are delivered. Fast forward, I said the date was to be determined. Why? Because Section 5, read with Section 24, which says you must develop criteria upon which you will determine eligibility for military veterans. It then meant regulations must be developed. So the military veterans benefit regulations were developed and were published in 2014 in terms of section 24. Now, section 24.1 is just but one piece of regulations that we developed. Now, those regulations are putting, besides the definition of a military veteran, which I will talk to, so that we can clear out the understanding of who a military veteran is and what governs the military veteran stature. You have the eligibility criteria that are provided in the regulations, and regulation 3 there says the applicant, allow me to say applicant, the applicant must be a military veteran in terms of the definition of the military veteran, which means the person must have been participated on either side. The person must be a citizen. The person must have participated or been enrolled in the National Defense Force and trained and then exited. Now I'm talking to what is called MSDS. I'm doing this intentionally because part of this is to make sure that we educate each other and we create a general understanding of the definition, how it then gives rise to what is called a military veteran. So for as long as that person is not dishonorably discharged by the organization where the person belongs, you hold that. There's a reason why I'm saying you hold it. Because then when you go to the regulation will tell you that the person then must be a military veteran in terms of the definition. It adds a requirement that comes from the section 6 of the Act. It says this person must have been listed in the National Military Veterans Database. And that's where I'm going to talk.
Okay.
So for a person to be considered, there must be evidence to the fact that the person is on the National Military Veterans Database as provided for by the section 6 of the Military Veterans Act, read together then with the regulations. Now, allow me then to quickly then go to what would be the form of evidence. I'm going to mention scenarios, and I want to be very practical on this so that we assist the process. Firstly, we all know that the provincial department, within the provinces, there are offices for military veterans. They are in all possibility linked to existing departments because all organs of state in one form or another are providing a service to military veterans. And the role of the Military Veterans Department is to coordinate, develop databases, and report to a point where in cabinet at some point, all organs of state were called and they were given a template in terms of this education, in terms of skills development, in terms of empowerment, in terms of honoring, what are you providing? Because it is a must to all organs of state. It's for that reason that it remains then a goal that is impeccable. And that is why you would find that the database, the Treasury, began to put that as a field because it is impeccable. Speaking the Eastern Cape English. Now, the impeccability of it means then that you must have an evidence that you can use. Now, I want them to say that there are many scenarios. I'll take 4 scenarios. 1, scenario where a person is registered in the National Military Veterans Database. That person will have what is called a certificate that is signed by a duly authorized person within the Military Veterans Department. Of course, it will be national.
Is this a hard copy? Physical hard copy.
It's a hard copy. It's a hard copy. And at a glancing on that certificate, it talks about the first number, it talks about the ID, it talks about the initials. But remember, for you to be enlisted there, before we run wild in terms of the thinking, there are specific documents that you provide. And some of the documents are obtained from the personal system of the Department of Defense. But if you never integrated, your case is determined like the TVBC states, you will get that information from the archives section. I'm giving you the process now of arriving at this certificate so that you don't say this certificate is not having sufficient information. The information was acquired at the time when the due diligence was to be done for the person to be loaded on the system.
Got you.
So as it is, the certificate now has that information. Now, and I'm using now the institutional memory of having been the part of the formation and part of the implementation at some point. Within the military veterans capability, there's what we call empowerment stakeholder management business unit. Now, in that business unit, there is a capability that deals with your legal entities for military veterans. I'm giving this full picture so that people can understand why someone will bring this and this. They have what they call a database of military veterans companies. Remember, that is just recording them. So a person then would naturally, if the person is on the database, even have a certificate coming from that side that says this particular company now. Now, we're not talking about the person, we're talking about the company. This company belongs to X, and X is a military veteran. And it is recorded in the military veterans database of companies. Now, this has got nothing to do with registering. Remember, registering in terms of the Companies Act or any legal entity is done at DTIC and they are organs of state. We're talking about military veterans here and how then you could solicit any form of evidence. So in any way, either way, it will be a certificate. Now we've dealt with a scenario A of a person who has applied, who has been, the outcome has been positive, the person then has a certificate. What happens then? Let me take our own mothers and fathers and brothers who decided not to integrate for very many reasons. So you will then find those people not necessarily in having a personal number because they never integrated.
Sure.
And these people then will be known by people who are in exile. And the way then of making sure that those people get into the database is a verification process. There's a verification process, a verification teams that are at the instruction of the executive authority, the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. And this verification, most of us, yes, the verification is an enabling those people who never integrated to get into the database and end up with the same certificate. So the verification committee then, as formed by the minister, will be the one then that does the verification interview. They normally do them provincially. And I want to say this, that this particular process is very important because it ensures that the person who is in the database is a military veteran. Allow me to say, you have struggle veterans, you have military veterans. These are two different entities. Hence, this process becomes very, very important. And that process then is a process that lends the applicant being then in the database when then the person has been duly due diligenced, if I may put it that way. So we've dealt with the people who never integrated.
Now,
So
Advocate,
the
sorry,
certificate remains.
just to interrupt.
Yes.
So far there's
Yes.
two certificates you're talking about. One is
Yes,
the certificate of the military, off the military veterans database. And then
Yes.
there's another database, which is the military veterans company.
yes.
Those are two. So those are the two options right
Okay.
now that an SCM person can ask for or expect to get. Is that right? Are there more?
Definitely, those are the two. Those are the two
Those are the
options you've said it, and they are all coming from the Section
that
6 of the
database.
Military Veterans Act,
Now, is that
because it says the department must keep various databases.
Got you.
Yes.
Now, is that
yes.
accessible? That database, is that accessible to officials outside of the military veterans department?
Okay. Let me then become
To
a
verify.
data privacy legal practitioner.
Sure.
Because of the PPR requirements, you would expect the person who's applying to provide that.
Got you.
However, then, if then we look at organs of state and proper application of PPR, it then stands to reason that when the proper administrative requirements have been fulfilled between those organs of state in terms of personal information. Remember, you have 8 principles around personal information. So there are some requirements that must be fulfilled to make sure that that verification takes place. But indeed, that can be done, but pursuant to the administrative processes. For example, verification of people with Home Affairs is one of the projects that I was engaged in. And that required compliance with the 8 principles or the 2 organs of state to make sure that in whatever they do, the owner of the personal information, the data subject, is informed of processes and has accented. So I'm saying that can be done for as long as there's compliance with the PPR principles.
Okay. So,
Yes.
so the proof would be one of those 2 documents.
Yes.
Military Veterans Company, a military veterans person, and that would be sent through then.
Yes.
And you're saying there is some way then that an organ of state outside of this defense area can providing PPI is complied with, verify.
There is a mechanism.
Is there like a number, a military veterans number or something? Is there?
We can provide that. We can provide that. I
So
still remember KZN was actually, and DPW were one of the organs of state and Northwest that were keeping me busy with exactly what you are asking. But you are very correct. They need to form a relationship, and probably one other approach would be to I don't know how possible it is for Treasury to assist in forging such a relationship at a norms and standards level. I don't know how possible it is, but I'm just looking at how to make it easy for other organs of state. But of course, the information regulator will have to be pulled in terms of making sure that if there are any exemptions, they are done in terms.
Sure.
Yes.
So I would appreciate, I would understand that maybe some military veterans would not have a scanner that they could scan the certificate. So if they were to ask, if we were to ask then for that one reference number, would it be, what would that be? A military veterans reference number or a military veterans ID number, or what would it be that?
Sean, on studying the certificate itself, what I discovered is that it has the personal number, person number. But remember, person number is not for uniform members only.
Correct. Yeah.
As a civilian, you have a person number also. So it does not assist us quite a lot. Probably, Sean, one of the things that one might have to check is in the database itself, the number that identifies that particular military veteran, because then that would be a unique number. But when I checked the certificates, they don't provide that unique number. Probably it's something that one would actually check and fit and in terms of possibilities, because it's also, this is the process of also for assisting them to have certificates that assist this process.
Good one. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Yes. So in my discussions with them, I will just check if it's possible that then there could be that unique identifier. If it's there, then it could be utilized. But yes, that's the situation.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask if we can move on a little bit, and we can.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, that's fine.
Let's just keep it at this
Thanks
level,
very much.
and then we can. Certainly at some time in the future maybe drill down a little bit more. I want to ask Sanele if you could come in. Thank you very much, Advocate.
Thanks, Sean.
Very, very interesting and enlightening. Thank you. Sanele, if I could ask you to come in and maybe just share with us some thoughts then on the other aspects that we would typically then look for in terms of proof on the other specific goals. And nice to see you there, Sanele. Welcome and Happy New Year to you. And did you have a good break?
I never had a good break, Sean.
So
I'm not sure what your question.
It's
a testing question.
It's a testing question, and you know, it has a purpose, and the purpose is just to say, you know what, there were a lot of people that were working fairly hard over the last December and January, and let's not forget that, and let's just say thanks for that, and thanks for that commitment. I've just put up on the screen now the other things: Black people, Black women, people who are disabled, Black youth. Your thoughts on proof as far as these other aspects are concerned? And I think I gave you a hint in my message this morning.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you want to share with us some thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I won't take long. In terms of the central suppliers database, if you look at it, somehow it can be used as proof. But also, I think I need to make the colleagues aware that in this platform, we participate at our personal capacity. Because, you know, if you're working for Treasury, you will always be quoted. You can use central suppliers database as proof, in a sense that you use the ownership, the splits of the ownership, because what we discussed with National Treasury is that they need to try and align the current CSD to the new regulations, because the way it's structured now, it is structured in a way that it talks to the 2017 regulations. So obviously, once you use CSD, there will be a point where some of the colleagues will be using PE. So then there should be that relationship with the National Treasury and the DTI and the BE Commission, so that they could still cater for that split of ownership. If your specific goal is looking for anything above 51%, then the CSD could at least cover that aspect as it currently covers it now. If you are looking for 100%, your CSD can verify that as it currently covers it now. So the CSD, whenever there is a change, they shouldn't lose that as part of the verification. However, some of the risks that exist is that somehow CSD is open for abuse. I'm happy that Advocate is talking about the military veterans. If I can share my experience on that part, we ran tons of tenders where we are trying to uplift the military veterans. So what we wanted to use, what as proof there, was a letter from the DMV that has been signed by them to say, okay, this is the military veterans, and we acknowledge that person in our database. We started in the right footing, but since we had a lot of business to offer, and then the guys at the DMV started dragging, and they started now losing interest in assisting us. In that gap that was created, we started receiving fraudulent letters that's used to look the same as the letters that we get from the DMV, but they were manufactured at the back door. So when luckily, because we had a good relationship with the military veterans in the province, somehow we were running a very transparent and open tendering system. They would know if the person is trying to defraud us, and somehow they will raise some objections in terms of the appeals tribunal, in terms of making us aware that, okay, this person that is claiming to be a military veteran is actually not a military veteran. And the problem now was created by this gap, because we sent these letters to DMV for verification, and they never responded to us. They started ignoring us. It seems like we're putting a lot of pressure to them to verify these letters, simply because we got it from the Central Suppliers Database and we correlated with the letter that they submitted. However, not trusting this document at the face value, you have to verify them with the DMV department. But then that gap was created. So that's why I'm saying there's a risk this exists when you use CST. So some of the elements cannot be verified because the CST does not have any live link, and the DMV does not have an electronic database to this end to upload this information.
Let's tackle the specific ones, Sanele.
Sure.
Okay, so you've said there's a specific risk then on the military veteran aspect. What about Black ownership, youth, women, and disabilities? Let's take each one of those. I mean, CSD integrates with the Home Affairs systems where the ID numbers are and the demographics of the people are. It integrates also with CIPC, where the shareholding information is. So certainly, surely, you know, Black ownership, youth ownership, women ownership, those would be verified.
Yeah, those could easily be verified. Those could easily be
I mean,
verified.
they have already been verified. I'm trying to get to that point. I mean, there's no additional work that anyone can do.
Yeah. Those could easily be verified, and I think you can trust CSD on those ones. That's why I wanted to talk about them towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah, those, because you know, even if you request an ID copy, you can still verify if someone is male or female. And also in terms of the youth, you can still verify that in terms of looking into the years. But the gray area is the race. I'm not so sure if CSD is putting forward the actual race, and if the ID number, if the ID copy would classify someone in terms of the race, because I'm bound to be corrected on that one. How do you then see if someone is Black? Or are we going to define that Black in terms of the triple BE? So that's a gray area which I think also you Sean, maybe you can assist on that one.
I think it's a question. I'm assuming that Home Affairs carry that demographic information.
Yeah, I would hope that Home Affairs can assist on that. And in that instant, I'm trying to create in my mind an environment which can create a favorable ground for our practitioners to be able to work toward verifying that information using the available information from Home Affairs. But what could be that mechanism? Maybe we need to start engaging with Home Affairs in that respect.
So here's the question, Sanele. If we've got the information in CSD, do we even have to ask for ID copies?
Yeah,
as proof. That's the question, because we want to try and simplify this process, right? We've moved from a space where the only proof we required was triple BE certificate. Now we're going to have all of these different things. We're going to get rate certificates and things from the chief, and we are going to complicate this to the point that it's going to be so difficult if we're asking for all of these different things when we've got CSD that has a bulk of the information in it.
I agree with you.
Can't we just say, you know, this is the best we've got, and we go with that, and the integration is there on those aspects.
I agree with you, Sean, on that. We need to try as much as possible to be simple. In fact, in February, when I'll be hosting an SCM forum, these are the issues that I would be trying to create a discussion, because I'll be bringing in the colleagues from National Treasury. I'm hoping to get hold, because I've spoken to some of the DTI colleagues and they've indicated the positivity of coming to join us. Because those are the things that we need to discuss. In terms of the other verifiable proof on CSD, I do not think we should request any sort of additional documents. Even if requesting, because some of the colleagues would even request a copy of the CSD, which is really not necessary. But the issue where I still find a gray area where we might end up requesting that document, additional document, is the issue of race classification. Where do we classify race? And
that's a good question. Sanele, I've been giving some thought to this point about the copy. And one of the challenges that we've got is we want to understand what is their ownership at the time that they submit the tender, because things change. Do we not want to ask for that copy and have something in our processes to just check when the copy was done, that report was done? And I think we need the full report. I don't think the summary report is going to work anymore. And then at least we've got a date stamp on that document to say this is what the ownership was like at this point in time. Because if we just rely on the online, things change.
So
any thoughts?
So this is what I used to do when I was still doing the operations. Now that we had the pre-qualifying criteria of the military veterans, and a lot of people changed to be military veterans, and we managed to find out and disqualify all of those that were trying to defraud us. However, now in a situation where you are evaluating your tender and trying to ensure that the empowerment actually provides that positive contribution to the society and the population that you are targeting. You need to keep a continuous monitoring, in a sense that we said you should keep the status for the duration of the contract, from the date of closing to the duration, towards the end of the duration of the contract. So when we awarded, we double checked that. And when we were signing service level agreements with each and every service provider that was awarded, we had a computer, a laptop, where we can run CIPC, historical report, detailed report, and and CSD at the same time. And you'd find that some of them have already chased away the military veterans that they used to claim the pre-qualifying points. So in that sense, you disqualify the service provider if you still have an appetite of running the tender process, or you can instruct the service provider to correct the situation. So correcting the situation means we will not sign the service level agreement until your status remains to the original status that we awarded you. And they would correct that. And then you have now something called contract empowerment, where you will monitor the contract insofar as the empowerment is concerned. So that's another unit. But it's monitoring the same pre-qualifying criteria that we advertised. Are the things still the same? Is the military veteran still in the system, in the company that we awarded? So those are the things that you can use.
Sure, good, thank you. Nandi, you've raised your hand.
Good morning, colleagues. Thanks, Sean. Two things. I would request that we unpack the subject on the municipal statements, because colleagues are raising issues around the POPI information, all of that. But secondly, many years ago, when CSD was introduced, National Treasury ran presentations throughout departments and whatever. And on their presentation, they did indicate on what information we should put reliance on pertaining to CSD. And we know that tax matters and banking details are one of those. And I remember on the top of my head, CIDB was not one. And now when you talk about the BE certificate, when a company loads their declaration on CSD, their BE affidavit or position will be updated. So that now depends on people loading, because we know that some people don't load. That's why you find the company will be saying, process of deregistration is ongoing or something of that nature, meaning that they have not updated. So what I'm raising is there are certain components that are live that changes from time to time, be it ownership of a company and all of that. So maybe we should also, as we decide to put reliance on CSD, let's just be sure that it is those things that are valid. And also with the municipalities, one can request a restatement. Somebody mentioned about their chief and everything. One time when I was working in municipalities, I used to have this form that somebody would have to take to the municipality to fill in and confirm that indeed they are in that particular jurisdiction. So as we do that, we must also be careful that we don't create maybe an idea for municipalities to use it as their own credit control, whatever, where they will say, we won't fill it in for you if you have not paid your rate and taxes or whatever.
Good, thank you, Nandi. I think we lost you there. Sanele, any comments? And we'll go to Kevin. Any comments from you on the locality issue? Yeah, because there were a lot of comments in the chat about municipal bills and you know, that's for big towns, but if you're in a village, yeah. Any thoughts from yourself on that?
I think what will happen in that extent is that we will have to use what we have. Otherwise, we will not be able to introduce any sort of proof that we can't rely on any sort of legislation in terms of validating it. You see, the municipal bid are one of them, but it's also for people in mostly the suburban areas or well-developed areas. And in the instant where you are staying in rural areas, you would use a letter from the councillor. The letter from the councillors are available everywhere, and they are an acceptable proof that you are staying here and your business is staying here, or whatever that you want to prove in terms of the letter of the council. I think they have various tick boxes what you want to prove in terms of that letter, but they are the current proof that we can use, legal proof that we can use. Otherwise, it's quite different. It's quite difficult to find multiple proof that you can use.
Is there any time frame issue around those letters? So Kevin, you're welcome to come in as well. You know, does it say that this letter is only valid for the next year, or is there anything like that?
Yeah, normally I think they would be valid for a period of 3 months. Yeah,
3 months, okay.
3 months. I'm not sure if they also form part of the issue of the other communication that was issued by the DPSA. The documents are valid for a period of 6 months now. So, but they probably will be valid for a period of 3 months, not older than 3 months.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Sanele. Let's ask
Thanks.
how to come in. How, good morning.
Good day. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Thanks. Fine, and you, Sean?
Good. How's your break?
Fine.
Okay,
No comment.
Let's move on. Okay. So, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. One you have already touched on, and Nandi has touched on, the CSD one. And the CSD one, what I would like to indicate, Sean, is that additional to the previous one, the goals, remember that we were using triple BEE certificate before. We had to attach evidence of such category. So in this case, I believe it would only be fair, especially knowing that our CSD is reliable on some of the aspects that are like your ID number, home affairs, and other bank verifications and all those others. But the addresses and other things like your triple BEE, it's information that is valid when it's updated. So let us rather, that is what now I would say, have an additional proof or evidence, and also to be mindful of time, as you indicated. Now, what we need to even discuss, Sean, is on the issue of joint ventures and or consortiums, because you would be having in some cases maybe 2 categories, the other ones being black and then the other partner being a military veteran or any other. So, or we would be having maybe a male and female. So these are now something that we need to touch on also, especially for, I know departments like your Department of Public Works, they deal a lot with joint ventures on the infrastructure projects. So I think that we should also touch base on that. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Kevin, do you want to come in on the joint ventures and subcontracting?
Yes, Sean.
So
It's on my camera.
what we had previously was we had with the triple BEE certificates, we had that if you had a joint venture, then you need to submit a consolidated triple BEE scorecard as if you were one. When it comes to something like military veterans and youth, you know, that's not going to be possible. Any thoughts that you've got on this issue of joint ventures. Let's just unpack joint ventures first and consortiums.
Yeah, colleagues, the issue will in any case be when it's a joint venture consortium. We have to look at the percentage of work that will be completed by the primary tenderer,
The different parties, yeah?
the different parties involved here. Let's say, for instance, the primary tenderer will perform 60% of the work, and the other partner will perform 40%. Or if it's more than two, then it's obviously
Sure.
which partners will perform which task and which percentage
Keep
of
it
the
simple.
work.
Keep it simple for now. Let's just
Yes,
assume
yes.
two. Okay.
Just look at it two, right?
60 and 40.
Yes, 60 and 40. So obviously there must be some kind of service level agreement between the two parties. And that will indicate the work that will be done and the percentage of work that each party will perform. And that will be the basis. That's the first step. So that's the first step, is to determine the percentage of work to be completed by both parties, right? Then we look at the percentage ownership of those various companies. And then we'll look at the specific goal, thirdly, at the specific goal that the department or municipality or entity has published in the RFQ or the RFP.
Right.
Let's say, for instance, it is locality. Let's say it's women. Let's say it's military veterans. I look at which of those specific companies, whether it's the primary company, whether it's the secondary company, in terms of their shareholding, whether they are youth, military veterans, women, etc. And then based on the percentage of ownership of that particular company, you will also give them percentage points.
Got you.
Proportionally. So let's make an example. Let's say for one company, the primary company has got performed 60%. The secondary company performs 40%. The primary company doesn't have disability, people with disability in the shareholding, but the secondary company has got people with disability, and it's 30%.
Okay.
So then it will be 30% from the 40%, the secondary company, of that specific points that you will allocate. There will be 0 points for the primary company because in their shareholding, there's no disability. So that's how you determine
that's how you go through
percentage in terms of the various steps which I've just mentioned.
I was
considering also the documentation that must be provided to that effect.
I was hoping you weren't going to give that example of locality, Kevin.
Yes, yes.
Do you think we treat locality in the same way?
Locality, if you're in a particular locality, I think that's something that we still have to debate on. You might get some opinion from the other guys. I haven't applied my mind in terms of that. But I think also in terms of locality, it is workable when we have a particular solution in that regard, you know. But let me just apply my mind. If we look at locality, then I think that it's also about that companies that should be in that particular region. The question is that if the secondary company is not in that particular region, right, in the village or in the district municipality, then obviously that secondary company won't get points for it. You know. So, and that will be, colleagues, the important part of it. These conditions you will have to put in as special conditions or as part of the bidding documents that you're going to issue to suppliers.
Right,
So
right.
it must be clear in the tender documentation. It must be clear in terms of what you want to achieve and what documentation must be attached. So what we said now in terms of JV consortiums is when you allocate points based on ownership, it has to be in the tender documentation as a special condition. I'm just using special condition as an example. Your procedures will dictate what will be in there, but that's important that the tenderer needs to know exactly how points will be allocated in terms of ownership for that specific goal, or in terms of location for that specific goal. So it must be very clear in terms of the tender documentation.
Very good, thank you. Kevin, there in the 2017 regulations, we had that complicated regulation on subcontracting. If they subcontract more than 30%, and if they subcontract to an entity which is worse than them, then we don't give them points. However, if the entity is subcontracting to his EME, then we do give them points. Are you suggesting that we maybe apply the same logic that you've just gone through in the consortiums to the subcontracting model? So if we're subcontracting, we've got a primary partner and they're subcontracting work. The work they're subcontracting to happens to be a youth-owned company. They're subcontracting 30% of the work to a company that's 100% youth-owned. And if we've got a specific objective that is youth, then we would apply that.
Yes.
You're thinking the same thing on the subcontracting.
So in the 2017 regulations and even on the implementation guide, which National Treasury issued subsequently, I think they are quite valid procedures which National Treasury have issued, which organs of state can adopt into the 2022 regulations and the policies. Some of the things you might not have directly into the policy, you might perhaps have in a guideline document, you might have in a circular, you might have in a manual or an SOP. But there are some of those provisions in there which I think are still valid. The 30% above the 30 million rand. What about those subcontracting below 30 million rand? Will there be a particular threshold? Will you say, okay, let's standardize on the 30%, and then when it's above 30,000 with 30 million rand, let's make it compulsory. So that the organ of state will determine.
Those are preference policy decisions. Hey?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
And also the issues, Sean, of subcontracting. When you're subcontracting to a company which got a lower level. If you use the BE levels. Those kind of issues. So they are quite interesting provisions, which I think still might be valid to incorporate into the policies and guidelines and procedures into the new regulations.
Okay, very good. Let's just quickly ask Richard Rapiri. You raised your hand, and I'm sure you've got something to contribute on this one, Richard.
Thank you, Sean, and good morning, colleagues, and compliments to all of you. Yeah, I've been listening quite well, and mostly I agree, but I also have questions in terms of what is the way forward. As much as I've agreed with all the speakers, Kevin, Sanele, and them, we must be trading carefully in terms of moving to this new regulations, because we don't want to be found wanting again at the level of now departments and municipalities, rather than what the minister has gone through in finance. Now, I've been listening into the explanation in terms of how we can then divide the point systems for subcontracting, for consortiums and all that. For me, I think we should look at more simpler exercises rather than more complicated exercises. One, we have an opportunity now to draft our own processes in terms of what we want to achieve as specific goals in terms of, and those goals are linked to the NDP and the RDP goals. So it's very easy for us to go into the RDP gazetted document and take out what government has been trying to implement over the years, and they failed. And I'm still saying that we are still failing even with this current regulations, because the only thing that it has brought to us and it helped us is that it has got rid of the BEE, which has never achieved anything. And I think from my side, it's a good idea that we leave out the BEE, because as we are, Kevin has rightly would say, that we went back into the 2001 regulations, which then give us an opportunity to look at how we can draft. And as we draft our policies, the minister has been found wanting on other aspects because of he had no right to prescribe.
Sure,
But
sure.
that does not mean that the 2017 regulations were advancing the cause in terms of the RDP goals and reconstruction and development goals. So we can actually take that and try and rehash them and put them into our policies and make them work.
So Richard,
yeah,
Richard, you said that you know, the idea that Kevin shared on the subcontracting the consortiums was complicated and we should look at simpler things. Have you got ideas, or you're just saying in principle we should look at more simpler ways?
Yeah, in principle, we should look at more simpler ways in terms of trying to now go to the level of, you know, dividing the companies in terms of which companies is black. We know that joint ventures are created for a purpose. And the companies that form a joint venture, when it comes to evaluation, we look at them as one because they become a joint venture partners and they trade as a joint venture partners. Now, as they are joint venture partners, first they have to pass the CIDB test in the infrastructure space. Now they have to qualify or be eligible for that tender as a JV. Now, going into the other elements where you now look at the percentages of work, that should not be regarded as an indicator to determine whether a person or a particular company will then claim a certain percentage of their scores in terms of race, in terms of being black, in terms of other things that we are trying to achieve. So by virtue of being partners, that JV should qualify for the total allocated points in those determinants if one of the partners meets that requirement. For me, that's if you now zoom it back into a percentage, I think we're putting more work, because it's going to need it's not a simple mathematics as one can look at, but it's going to need SAWA officials to be more flexible and understand the laws of mathematics to be able to come to a decision around those. And if you look at the percentages of work and the liabilities that are carried by each partner, that only indicates a risk factor. It does not determine whether the person is supposed to claim for being having a disabled in a company. The joint venture would have a disabled if the disabled is already accommodated in one of the partners. So there should be full points allocated to that. So, and other things that we are looking at, military veterans, and I heard the lady, Madame Ntsaluba, talking about military veterans. I think the way, if you look at the 22 regs, they're not limiting, because if you go to the act itself, it still says categories of persons. Now, categories of persons includes the different kinds of groupings, and you can group into women categories of persons, and you can even extend it to women who are also veterans in that regard. So you are not limited in terms of how you can classify your groupings in terms of categories of persons who are disadvantaged by the previous dispensation. So you can actually work around that. It's not that there was no specific zooming into the military grouping currently in the current regulations, because they are assumed that they are part of those categories of persons.
Got you.
Yeah, I think I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, appreciate it. And you're coming from the perspective of CIDB, and I think there's also something to factor into policies and processes is if you have an unincorporated joint venture, you've got a consortium, you've got two entities that submit a bid, and this might not be a CIDB bid, but it might be for IT or something like that. They submit as a consortium, but they haven't created a separate PTY limited. How would you treat those? I think is a question. Kevin's given some thoughts on that one. Thank you, Richard. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind just going through the chat, there was some questions right up front, and I'm going to ask you to have a look at that. I think you've answered most of them in terms of the municipal rate bills and the villages and things. I'm just going to quickly ask Adrienne if willing to unmute, just to share with them some perspectives, and then you've got some great points that you put in the chat there, Adrienne. And then Sanele has offered to, he said this directly to me, I see, has put a guideline together to help practitioners. Would be happy to share this on the platform. Sanele, thank you very much for that. And I'm sure people would be very, very open to just getting other perspectives. And I'm sure if they accept it, then if they would please also just give you some feedback on what you've put together, I think that would be welcome. Blake, you've asked the question that I was waiting for. Has any organ of state thought of making use of the BBB certificate as a proof of the points claimed? Give some thought to that, Blake. I'm going to ask you to come in after Adrienne. I see you've unmuted.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, colleagues. I am in the fortunate position that I've been 33 years in the service. So when I started, which was in 1989, we were still in the old dispensation, and I have then matured in my career, as it were, during the new dispensation. So I've seen a lot of trends come and go. What worked for us, what worked very well, and what was very similar to the system that National is now proposing was implemented, I think, at the start of, I can't remember, I'm sorry, either 2001 or 2004 with the full rollout of Supply Chain Management 1, where we had different templates. I can recall the ones we used most frequently in the Western Cape was Western Cape based, female ownership, and then people previously disadvantaged. It worked extremely well. My concern at the moment is that we are operating in a vacuum. There are too many choices and there are not enough guidelines. My sense is that state entities without strong policy teams are going to have a hard time distilling all of this into a usable format. It becomes enormously vague and generalized. And what concerns me also is the fact that it has become onerous for us to be registered on various sites so that we can get certain information from it. But it is going to grow infinitely worse now, where we will need to either register and get passwords or gain access to certain formerly confidential sites to get to the verification of the information that we are trying to determine. Also, the process must not become so onerous and so work intensive that it slows down our key function, which for me in the Western Cape is arranging contracts and managing them. Already there are so many obstacles and so many boxes to tick that it becomes just another obstacle, especially if it involves this amount of work just to verify one small contributor to a greater process. And if you consider that we have large bids with upwards of 50 suppliers sometimes, where each and everything has to be verified, one person who is normally going to be responsible for undertaking that task is not going to be enough. The The ideal is a simple system that everybody can use, where the guidelines are such that we work within a certain standard that can be applied across the board in a fairly simple, uniform way. That doesn't cause confusion, that tells us clearly what we want and where we should go and look for it. Thank you, Sean, for the opportunity.
So, may I ask you a question? You raised the example of large tenders, 50 tenders come in, the amount of work is going to be quite significant. Do you remember the name of the new 6.2? Do you remember what 6.2 was called?
Oh, no, you must excuse me.
It was a declaration for local production, local content. It was a declaration. What are your thoughts about using a declaration approach? So we ask bidders to declare formally the aspects that we're asking them to claim the points on.
Fantastic idea.
We give ourselves the option to request the documentation if we suspect something.
There we go.
And we only ask for the documentation for the one that we're going to award the work to.
Yes, that would work beautifully. That is a brilliant approach. Thank you very much. You've actually put in words what I've tried to explain, but failed to distill. Excellent idea. Now, if for each target group, you could develop a declaration like that, that includes whatever documents should be serving as proof and verified according to the decision of the specific entity, that would work wonderfully. And if you then apply the approach that you've suggested, it would be a wonderful way of cutting down on the work and making sure that you have all the documents on file for auditing purposes and for compliance purposes of the bidder to whom you are eventually awarding, especially in cases where there are many suppliers. Wonderful idea. Thank you, Sean. That's been a great contribution.
Good. Thank you for that. I wanted to run that by someone as experienced as you are. You are referring to the Western Cape document 4. Was that the 6.4 that we used to have in the Western Cape in 2001?
No, you actually, the only recent example I could think of a document in the format that I proposed for this whole process was the 4, but you've actually put your finger on the pulse with the 6.2. That it becomes a declaration that for each goal, for each target group, we issue a different declaration with the requisite set of documents for that specific commodity or for that specific grouping.
Or we integrate it into one, and we have one declaration for multiple
as the 4 does at the moment, and you have an affidavit at the end or an affirmation that needs to be signed and subsequently certified to declare that the information is in fact correct and verifiable. The upshot of that would also be that if there is any kind of fraud perpetrated, then you have a case to make because the document has been certified formally.
Absolutely, and we've got that the option to take action against somebody and cancel a contract if we need to, and all of that is in the regulations, and that's nicely laid out for us. So those are options. I asked on our Telegram group if anybody had the old copies of the SVD 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4 from 2001. I do. I managed to get up to 6.4. Do you have anything more than that?
I will see. I know that my immediate supervisor, my deputy director, asked me for this information just before the holidays. I think he had the same idea, and I was able to retrieve it from a hard copy of a 30-year-old document. Well, not quite 30. I think it was 28-year-old document sitting in my office. So if you want and you are interested, I can send it to you separately. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very good. Thank you for that. So let's just quickly check. Blake, can you unmute? Are you able to share with us your points?
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Morning,
I think you and Anita actually dealt with sort of like the question that I was asking. The approach that we are investigating is exactly that, creating a new MBD6 in the form of a declaration, using the old forms. I've just left it in the chat as well, is to say that all of the forms that you are looking for, it's MBD, not SBD, but the information will be as usable, is still available on the mfma.treasury website. You'll just have to find the applicable circular, and you can get them all in Word format there as well. And the thing about, everybody's asking, how do we justify? What proof do we get? What proof do we apply to the tenders? How do we make sure that Section 10 of the BBBE Act is still complied with in terms of aligning our preference policy to the various sector codes? So that is really where my question is coming from. Because in terms of HDI and RDP, obviously the BBBE Act has looked at that as well. And, when a bidder is submitting a BBBE certificate, you sometimes do have to ask for the scorecard, which is generally an annexure to it. But that will also give the breakdown of the various percentages, whether it be race. It obviously doesn't cover women in totality, but it does cover Black women. It looks at other things like skills development, socioeconomic, and so on and so forth. So that is really where the question is how many of those here today, in terms of their respective organizations, will sort of be using that as proof to justify if somebody's claiming that they are 60% Black owned if you are using a specific goal as race. So you don't necessarily use the level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of the certificate or whatever it may be, but you actually use the detailed scorecard to justify why you are awarding points to the supplier. That obviously takes a bit of the legwork out of it in terms of, needing access to SIPC or whatever the case may be to confirm, the percentage ownership. It's, as one of the other speakers also mentioned, those BBBE certificates, if they were issued 7-8 months ago, can be outdated in terms of the current status quo of a company. But, at least it is some sort of tool that can be used to cut out a lot of the administrative work that's going to need to be done.
Fantastic, Blake. So why that is such an important tool as well is it's independently verified if it is for a generic SANES verification certificate. And that's one of the requirements on the regulations is that it is monitored. And it is a tool. There's a whole army of people behind that. And then we've got the EMEs and the QSEs, which is in the form of an affidavit, and a lot of that information on the affidavit is also there. So that would also be a useful option as well for evidence.
Yes. And what I'm actually doing is, if I've designed an MBD1, but I've designed it with the various annexures. So it isn't a separate MBD 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, whatever the case may be. But on the MBD 6.1, you can stipulate your specific goals, and then the actual declaration for which will be your annexure A, B, C, D, depending on the specific goal that you are looking at assessing. It would still require, obviously, the bidder to also themselves confirm who the owners are, what is the percentage, what is their race, what is their gender, what is their disability, whatever the case may be. But then the supporting evidence to that claim can be the BBBE certificate and its scorecard.
Thanks, Blake. Kevin, what do you think of that?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good approach that they have. Very good approach.
Yeah, good one, good one. Lisa, you've raised your hand. While Polisa's unmuting, quick one, Tombezetu, yes, the new 6.1 is on Treasury's website, OCPO's website. You can pick it up there. Polisa, go ahead.
Thank you, Sean. Happy New Year to you and the colleagues, and I hope that we are going to have a good year, even though we are hustling, whilst we are hustling and grinding early in the year. Sean, just directly maybe to Blake or all the other colleagues, like when it comes to the BBBE, have they considered breaking down those points as perhaps maybe how it was broken down in the 2017 regs? And or does it mean now they have just given points, let's say a sum of points of like in the 20 points, you just given 10 points, where you are now going to just say, okay, whether you were a level 8, let's say in the previous era, or your certificate is stating that you're a level 8, you are still going to get the full points, the full 10 points, and or you are a level 1, you're still going to get the same exact points? Or have they broken down that 10 points to actually maybe accommodate various statuses, level contributor statuses, where if you are an 8, you just get the minimal points, and or if you are a level 1, you still get full points? So
Polisa, maybe just expand a little bit more about what you're saying. So you're saying they submit a certificate with their scorecard. In the 2017 regulations, we used to say if you're a level 1, you score 20 points. Level 2, you score 18 points. Just what is your question? I'm not quite sure I understand. Kevin, I'm not sure if you understood.
I think maybe I agree with you. See, I was also having some difficulties with the points that she was referring to.
Polisa, just repeat your point again.
Okay, if you look at the 2017, on that one, we were clear on the fact that if you are a level 1 contributor, you will score the full 20 points, as you were saying, Sean. You were 2 if you get the 18 points. But now on the new way of doing things, or how we are considering, have the other colleagues considered that they are going to get the full 20 points if they are a level 1, and then get, let's say, 18 points again? Or are they going to just say, because we are now talking an issue of localities and new specific goals. Other colleagues of mine here in the Western Cape, I know that we have broken it down to say, you're going to get the 10 points. Let's say we split the 20 points now to 10 points for BEE, 10 points for locality. That one for locality, it's easy to break down because you can break it down within the area you are in, the district, the province, maybe South Africa.
Sure.
But the one for triple BE, I haven't met someone that is saying that they have broken it down, or are they just now, or are we just going to just give the full points now to a company if they are claiming and they've provided us with the triple BE certificate? I'm interested to know from other colleagues how they have tackled it. Thank you, Sean. I'm hoping I'm making sense now.
Thanks, Polisa. I think we do. So you've got the you're coming from the perspective of the Western Cape model that was put out. All right, good.
Yes.
Richard, I think you might have wanted to come in and just maybe help there. You still with us, Richard? Okay.
Sean, I've seen that Blake has also raised his hand.
Go ahead, Blake.
Yes, thank you so much. So just on the previous speaker, I think it's important to obviously understand what the triple BE codes actually looks at. You've 5 various sectors, and you can sometimes have a situation where, for example, a supplier has more than, say, 51% Black ownership, but they do not reach the necessary sub-minimums for maybe procurement, skills development, management control, whatever the case may be. That obviously also impacts on the overall level. So that supplier might end up with, say, 60% Black ownership, but their triple BE level via SANA's accreditation agency is, say, a level 6. Gotcha. The proposal that that I have put forward at this point is to say that let us look at the actual percentages. So our specific goal will be race. Based on race, we will then say, okay, and this is where we are still debating it, is to say, do we go back to the formula introduced in 2001, where we say, okay, if there's 10 points for race, your triple BE certificate scorecard says that you are 60% Black owned as defined in terms of the triple BE Act, and we therefore calculate that 10 points based on 60%. So for that specific goal, you get 6 points.
Got you.
Or are we saying your triple BE certificate shows that you have a Black percentage ownership? We are not specific in terms of what percentage ownership you must have. Gotcha. And the fact that you therefore have Black ownership, you then get the full 10 points. So from my side, I am
You
also
have
still just,
categories.
yes.
If it's greater
So
than 51%, you get the full 10 points. If it's less, you get 0. You can have
exactly.
those kind of categories, yeah.
And that's exactly the approach that we're investigating, and we're just finalizing that in preparation for the adoption of our policy. And it can go for the others as well. It can go for gender, it can go for skills development, it can go for, social economic procurement development. Do you as a large organization make use of SMMEs? That could also be a specific goal in terms of the BBB Act and what is rated in terms of the scorecard. So then that's really what we are looking at, and I hope that answers the previous speaker's question.
You said, thank you very much. So thanks for that, Blake. It's good perspectives. Sure, Kevin. This is a big topic, eh?
It is something I've realized last year when I uploaded my information with regard to BE status level, is that there's not a requirement to upload the BE certificate. There's not a requirement to upload the BE certificate. It's basically just declare that I'm at level 1. So some are also that, when you bring that in as a specific goal and as part of the documentation, there must also be a request to attach a certified copy of that sworn affidavit or BE certificate, because the way Treasury have redesigned CSD, it doesn't allow a supplier now to upload those documentation anymore.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, you're right. Suppliers don't have to give the copy.
Yes, in the past you had to upload it, but there's no provision made to upload it anymore.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Any last comments or thoughts, Kevin? And then I'm going to go to Sanele and then go to Advocate. Kevin, any
Sean,
closing
from my
thoughts?
side, I think, as I said earlier, there are quite a lot of challenges ahead, but the opportunity, colleagues, is there for you now to look at the specific goals that you want to achieve. Look at those objectives. Something I also want to add, Sean, is that we must also be mindful that, when we look at the RDP goals, remember the RDP goal, the Reconstruction Development Program was designed way back in, I think, 94, 95. A lot of water has flown in the sea now. So we must also be mindful of the National Development Plan 2030, some of those objectives in there, So don't just look at the RDP goals, also look at the NDP of 2030 and see what other government objectives are there that you might consider using as a specific objective. So that is basically what I want to add, Sean.
Good one. Thanks very much, Kevin. Thanks for your contribution today. I see there's a hand from Ron. Good morning, Ron. Welcome.
And I have a particular interest in the Western Cape's policy. Have they got an approved policy? Are they part of the 18% of your poll that said they have an approved policy? And if so, is it possible for us that they not have to get a copy, even if it's confidential? Thank you.
Sean, this is a question for Renelle, if she's still on the call.
Go ahead. Thanks. And if there is anyone from Western Cape, just to respond to Ron's question. Go ahead. There was a question.
Sean, this is Renelle's purview. She's our Director Governance. and her people would have developed something like this if in fact it has already been done. If she's still on the call, she might be able to answer. Regrettably, I'm in sourcing, so we work from the information that we get from her component.
Let's just check if Ronella is still with us. Ronella. Okay, it doesn't appear we've gone way over. Ron, we'll certainly keep that question going and see if we can try and get something from those in Western Cape. There might be something also from Arno. Yeah, I believe it has been approved, but it is just a model. It's just a framework. Each entity is still busy updating their own, which is why I think that this work is being done by the likes of Blake and others. Okay, very good. Sanele, any comments? Any closing comments?
Yeah, very brief. Thank you. In fact, I need to thank you, Sean. Thanks the colleagues. You know, last year towards the end, it's been a hectic one. But you know, the platform, the online chats has actually made it very easy, to be honest. One of the things that one would like to relay as a message is that we shouldn't have been caught off guard like this. This proves that somehow, as much as procurement and supply chain is our space, but we really are not somehow paying enough attention. Because if you have to get calls in the beginning of January of people saying, please, can you explain to me what actually is happening? You know, it means that person is absent. And that person, you know, they're probably sitting in a serious rank, so maybe CFO or the SCM manager. They just don't know. I mean, how many years this matter has been running? Started to get hot maybe towards the end of December. And everyone ought to have known that this is what is happening now. We shouldn't be discussing that what is actually happening. We should be discussing how far are you in terms of your policies? How far are you in terms of reviewing your specific goals? So we need to own the space. Procurement, we need to own the procurement space. We need to own the supply chain management space. And somehow, once we own the space, I'm looking forward to a point where the big numbers that we have on the chats are somehow commenting, all of them. We are used to commenting similar faces. But I'm looking forward to a point where the unfamiliar faces also comments, positively ask questions, to a point where we end up saying we own the space of procurement. And then now we move to that and start challenging the actual legislation. Because that's where we can be able to say, now we are working, and start challenging what is not working for us. In the same breath, teach as much as our service providers we can, so that they can also challenge the legislation. I can tell you now, I was running the rollout in December, and I was meeting mostly Black service providers, and they just don't know what is happening. And for me, that's quite painful, because these are the legislation that they use, and it somehow also signifies that we are not doing enough in our corners to make them aware that this is how it should be. This is how we're moving now. This is how we need to go forward. So to the colleagues, let's try to move to a space where we can say now we're in a professional environment. Everyone knows what is expected of them. Yeah, that would be it short. Thanks, colleagues. Thank you very much for the contribution.
Thank you, Sanele. Advocate, I'm not sure I could add anything more to that. And you?
Yes, thank you, Sean, and thanks to the colleagues, to the whole community of both the public sector, and also I want to indicate that there are people who are from the private sector here. who have come to actually be able to know what is happening. And I think it's worth acknowledging that, because if we want to take charge of the future, we must be part of the developments, like Sanele has said. Secondly, Sean, I want to raise what I raised in December, that this is actually calling for synchronization of planning processes. It's said that we are found to be using supply chain to push strategy. What am I saying? These goals that we're talking about, if internal audit function was here, I was going to advise them that as you are looking at the annual performance plans of this year, take these specific goals and make sure that they are reflected in the planning instruments. And that's how strategic plan takes place. I'm talking about now the synchronization, because the moment that is not there, this becomes an academic exercise. Yeah. And you are going to find the executives having issues with procurement, which is not going to be helpful. So I'm saying, as we're moving to the SONA, we're moving to the program of action, we're moving to the finalization of APPs, supply chain, make sure that internal audit has got this information of special objectives. We use them as a way of verifying the accuracy of the APP before it's signed, because it has not yet been signed for now. It's waiting for the SONA and the POA. That will assist. The second one is, Sean, I think the colleagues have indicated that there's nothing new under the sun. And when we started this debate last year, we said an interesting thing, that it's not about the food, it's about who cooked the food. That has been reconfirmed today. And I believe that the role is not to compromise service delivery. And I'm quite impressed of the suggestions that came, because they reaffirm some of the proposals that have been made in the space. Wherever it's possible, to make sure that there is an instrument that makes life easy, we need to do that. And if the instrument was there and there's no problem in terms of who implement the instrument, we need to make sure that it's implemented. We can't be generating tables of institutional memory, picking what's helpful, collating it, and using this forum to make sure that we march on the line together. Shalom.
Good one. Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you very much, Sanele, Advocate, and everyone else that has contributed. And we will have a topic on next week. And all the best to everybody, and getting your policies approved, getting your processes done, getting your SPDs updated, and getting ready. Was there someone else who wanted to make a comment? Henry, did you want to come in?
Oh, sorry, I don't.
Okay, cool. Thanks everyone. Thanks everybody, and all the best to all of you. And yes, good. What a time to be part of supply chain.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Keep well. All the best.